Howdy everybody and welcome back to the workshop. Now, I know it's been quite some time, but I'll talk about that here in a second. In today's video, however, we're going to be turning this failed dagger into a super wicked sweet fillet knife. Now, the reason this dagger was a failure is it picked up quite a bit of a warp when I went and heat treated it, and I was a silly goose and tried to straighten it out in a vise, and it snapped right here in the tang. I ended up trying to weld it back together. Wasn't happy with it, so chalk that up as a loss. But, as a wise man once said, knife makers don't make mistakes, they just make smaller knives. So we'll go ahead and fire up the forge and get this bad boy hot. So with the forge heating up, the reason I've been away for so long is I actually got locked up into Clink. No, but in all seriousness, I was working on my first ever knife drop. I made 8 knives, 4 of which are made out of 500 layers of 15 and 20 and 1095, and the other 4 are just 1080 mono steel. They are live, so if you'd like, go check those out at dsquaredknives.com. All that's enough talking, we can get to work. With the blade cooled down, got some scribe lines on there. Gonna now use a rough 36 grit and hog off some material, get the profile nice and cleaned up, and then hog off some of the sides to thin it down. It's a little over 1/8. I'm shooting for 1/8 to go into the heat treat, just to give me a little space in case I have to grind out a warp or anything of the sort. Give me a little extra material just in case that happens. Hopefully it doesn't. That'd be really cool. Hopefully everything goes super smoothly. You know, we can always hope for the best. But to the grinder we go. With the profile ground in, I'm pretty happy with that. So we can get our holes drilled right now. Ooh. Alright, now in order for me to drill the holes, I did have to anneal this here blade. It is 440C stainless steel, and it was pretty hard. I did in fact tear through a few bits before I realized that I needed to anneal it. So I put it in the kiln at 1,650 degrees for 6 hours and let it cool down in the kiln. Got it nice and soft and put some holes in this bad boy. So now it's nice and soft. We can go ahead and thin it down a little bit. I want it to be about 1/8 of an inch thick before we go in for our heat treat. So to the grinder we go. So with the knife now ground down, it's about 3:30 seconds, which I'm perfectly okay with. We're going to get it ready for our heat treat. Now, in order to heat treat stainless steel, you want to keep the oxygen out and away from the blade, and there's a few ways to do this. The way I'm going to do it is I'm going to be using this stainless steel foil here. Now, this piece of foil was a piece that I cut out for a project I did a while ago, but I didn't cut it right. I cut it a little too small, and you know what they say, reuse, reduce, and recycle. So we're going to go ahead and use this piece for this knife because it fits perfectly. Now, there is a trick that I forgot to do, is putting a little piece of paper in there, so that way the paper will burn up when it gets hot enough, and it'll actually take out all the oxygen that is left over from this process. It's pretty neat. With the blade nice and wrapped up, it's time to go into the kiln for our heat treat process. So we'll get that bad boy in there and get it fired up. So it is time to take it out and plate quench it. Now we'll spray it with some compressed air to cool it down. So now that the blade has completely cooled down, we can go ahead and take it out of the vise and get it out of this stuff. So we'll go over here and do that. And there she is. 440C doesn't need to be cryo treated. A lot of stainless steels, after you heat treat them, need to be cryo treated, I think is the right way to say that word. But 440C, either you can or you don't have to. It's really your choice. So for this one, we're not going to. We're just going to throw it straight back into the kiln for a temper cycle. So we have our fillet knife tempered back, and the temper is very important in a fillet knife, as well as the thickness. That's what gives it the springiness of it. You know, you ever seen a fillet knife bend on a table? Hopefully we'll be able to do that with this one. We'll find out here in a little bit, but that's done. So with our fillet knife properly tempered, it is time to go ahead and get our grinding done, grinding our bevels and all that fun stuff. with the bevels ground in the knife, got it all shaped up and everything. It's got some nice flex to it. You can see it's got a nice flex that way, nice flex this way, and it returns back to straight. So that means we have a good temper and a good heat treat, and we have a nice thin blade. Now it's time to go hand sand this bad boy. We're gonna make it shine real nice, good stainless steel, so we're gonna try and get a mirror finish on it. We'll see how that goes, and time to hand sand. Now, after all that super fun hand sanding, we got our blade to a mirror finish. Obviously you cannot see that. There's tape on the blade, but I did take it up to 5,000 grit and got a super gnarly mirror finish on there. It's gonna look really cool, and you guys will see that once the handle is on. I have the tape on here to try and protect it from little scratches and dings as much as possible, because it was quite the process. Now, for our handle material, we will be using this here G10 composite material. That being said, we can go ahead and get these bad boys drilled up and profiled and get them attached to the knife. With the epoxy curing on the handles, I want to take a quick second to talk about my experience at Blade Show Atlanta. This was the first Blade Show I have attended, and it was an absolute fantastic experience. That is actually where I got those scales from. I got them from Current Composites. They had a booth there, and they sell a lot of cool handle material. Another thing I want to talk about is how welcoming the bladesmith and knife making community was. I haven't had a whole lot of exposure to other bladesmiths and knife makers, and getting to go out and meet all the makers that I look up to and I've been watching since I was just a little boy was really cool. Everybody was super nice, and everybody just really wants to see each other grow, and it was a great experience for me to learn from these guys, and I got a lot from it. And I just want to say to all you knife makers out there, keep rocking on. You guys are the best. Now, the epoxy has cured, and it is time to go ahead and finish up this handle. We're going to go ahead and chop these pins off and do some little light grinding on it before we jump into hand sanding and get this bad boy looking super clean. So, cue the time lapse. So, with the handle all nice and shiny like, took that up to 1,000 grit. It turned out absolutely wicked. Go ahead and take the tape off and show that wicked sweet mirror finish. This is actually one of the first knives I've ever done a mirror finish on, and it turned out really nice, and it was a lot of fun. It was a crazy amount of hand sanding, but I think it was worth it. and it turned out really nice. It's just time to put an edge on this bad boy and give it a sheath, and that will be done right now. So we have our Kydex sheath here, some cool white camo Kydex on there. We have a wicked sharp edge on this bad boy, ready to fillet some fish. With that, it's going to take us to the end of today's video. I want to thank you guys so much for watching and joining along in this process of me turning a failure into a new knife. It's always fun to take old projects that didn't go right and turn them into something new. Give them a new life. Reuse, reduce, and recycle. Anywho, thank you guys again for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And don't forget to check out dsquaredknives.com to see my most recent knife drop there. There's some pretty cool knives. I had a lot of fun with them. The 500 layer Damascus. It's the highest layer count of Damascus I've done so far, so go check those out. It'd be really cool of you to do so. But anyway, thank you guys again for watching, and I'll see you in